it's Aaliyah from the Song of the Winds. I hope you're doing really well. Today's video is going to be kind of a Q&A, kind of a mishmash of different questions all put together. These were some questions that I have had submitted from my lovely viewers, and they're probably a little bit too quickly answered to have their own video, so I thought I would just collate a couple of them together. But before I jump into that, I just wanted to let you know that up until this point I have been filming twice a week, but I'm going to actually be stepping that back down to weekly. And the reason for that is it is a little bit difficult to find the time to film, and I'm a bit concerned that if I feel too sort of rushed about doing it and feel really pressured to do it, that it'll just be about getting something out and not having it to be like the right thing without it being actually well thought out. So I just want to be putting the right things out into the world, rather than trying to, follow this schedule that I've actually set for myself and is probably, doesn't really affect anyone besides me. So yeah, I hope you'll enjoy them weekly. And yeah, let's dive in and start this video. Okay, so the first question is, what should you do when you get a new deck for people that are just getting into Oracle and Tarot cards? Well, what I do when I first get a new deck is sit down and have a good look through. So I'll flip through every card and I'll spend some time looking at it, as much time as I can really afford to spend. I'm not going to get too caught up in, oh, I've only got 5 minutes, so I can't look at that deck. I really should be spending a whole day, and I should be sitting back in a comfortable chair and drinking tea and all this stuff. Life isn't like that. So if I've got 5 minutes to have a look at a deck, I will. If I've got longer than that, I will. And then once I've got a feel for the cards, then when I do actually have some time set aside, I will quickly cleanse the cards. And my sort of preferred way to do that is with Palo Santo, which is a Brazilian holy wood. If you're unfamiliar with how this works, you light the wood and it just smoulders very gently and gives you a small amount of smoke. And I really enjoy this because I'm a little bit sensitive to a lot of smoke, so I like that this doesn't last for too long. If you're into how this looks, I'll link below a really fantastic ASMR artist, Lune Innate, and she does lots of really cool Reiki and crystal based videos, and she smudges you a lot of the time. She smoke clears you with Palo Santo, which I find really relaxing. So side note, so I'll go through that, and depending on how I'm feeling, I might do just the entire deck as a wad, or I might do card by card. So it sort of depends on what kind of mood I'm in. So I guess I don't let what other people do guide me too much as to how I do it. It's more important that it feels right for you and it matches your lifestyle. Like, if you literally only have 5 minutes, you're just setting yourself up for a bit of disappointment if you think that you need to have this great big long involved ritual to get to know your cards. I mean, if you've got the time to spend to do that, like, that's amazing too, but don't ever think that just because you've only got a couple of minutes that you can't have a meaningful connection with those cards. Some people have them beside them on their bedside table, or they might sleep with them underneath their pillow. I don't tend to do that, simply because I've got a toddler and I know that the second she saw them, she'd be faster than me and the cards would be everywhere and probably torn. So it's really just like a bit of a safety concern that I don't do that. But I like to get to using them as quickly as I can. I'll usually do a small sort of deck interview spread with them. And you can find heaps online. Pinterest is a really good resource for different tarot spreads. And it will just help you work out what that particular deck is strongest at, what you can stand to learn from that deck, and various other sorts of questions, where it will challenge you, blah blah blah. There's a ton of cool things you can find. And then I like to do readings for myself and readings for other people with them as soon as I can, because I feel that's the best way to actually connect with them, is to start interacting with their energy and sharing your energy with them. So yeah, that'd be how I would get to know a new deck. And the next question is there a particular deck you prefer to work with, and if yes, why? Not really. I mean, I've got my favorites, but it's more like a selection of favorites. There isn't one deck that I tend to work with, pretty consistently. It's whatever I'm feeling drawn to at that time. And the pull of the shiny and new is always fairly strong with me, so I tend to like to work with a deck that I have just sort of received, you know, recently. And then seasonally is when decks tend to appeal to me the most, and depending on the subject matter too. Like if I'm reading for myself or for a client and I want it to be, you know, gritty, and I want the information to come through in a way where I'm not just looking at the standard kind of symbols for that particular card. It's not just like sticking too close to the Rider-Waite-Smith system, which is what I prefer, you know, to read with, that it might be a little bit more intuitive based. So in that case, I might go for like the slow holler tarot I really enjoy. But I mean, looking at my collection, it's honestly whatever I sort of feel like at that time. You know, sometimes I might want a bit of cheekiness, so I might go for the Housewives Tarot. That's quite a cool one. No, I don't really have a deck that I use consistently. I've got quite a few that I just I really love, and sometimes it feels like an oracle day, and sometimes it feels like a tarot day. So yeah, I just kind of let my eye wander and see where it ends up, and that's the deck that I use. The next question is, do you find it easier doing a reading in person or via distance? That's a really interesting question, because I feel like I'm of two minds about it. Sometimes reading in person is easier in a sense for me, because you're communicating with someone directly. Your, you know, tone of voice and your body language and your hand movements, I can't seem to keep my hands still when I talk a lot of the time, forms part of the interpretation, and you can really develop a rapport with your client when they're there directly in front of you, and there's that, you know, give and take of energy, and they can on the spot ask additional expanding questions, and so can you, and in a way that can give you a really, you know, broad, enriching kind of reading. And in my experience, that works well with people that are quite open to the experience and they want to really get to grips with things. But for me, it doesn't work so well if you've got someone who is quite a skeptic and sits across from you with, you know, very, very closed off energy and, you know, arms crossed, and is not interested in sort of sharing anything with you, and comes at it from like a, oh, I'm going to catch you up, you know, you're a charlatan kind of way. That makes me so nervous and uncomfortable that, you know, I almost can't even speak, honestly, so let alone trying to communicate any of these messages to them. So in some ways, if you've got it depends on the client for me in a lot of ways. But I like reading distance as well, because that means that I can take a lot more time to be quite eloquent and really specific about what I'm actually saying in that reading. I can make sure that I'm saying precisely what I want to say, and there's no room for misunderstanding my words when I, you know, say them in a particular, when I write them in a particular way. If I was doing, you know, readings in person, I pretty much wouldn't be, you know, offering readings, because that doesn't work for my my lifestyle and my family commitments at this point in time. So when I'm doing distance readings, it doesn't matter if I'm working at, you know, 7 p.m. on a Tuesday night or 5 a.m. on a Sunday morning. Like, I'm able to do that, but obviously you can't have, you know, clients really coming to you at that time, you know, when it suits me. Yeah, so I find I just wouldn't be able to actually offer it if I wasn't doing it at distance, if that makes sense, at least for this point in time. And I do find it a bit hard to block out other people's energy. So for that reason, I tend not to do markets or anything like that. And I think you do get a lot of the skeptics coming along. It's totally fine to be skeptic, but you know, I think that would really affect my ability to actually read effectively for them. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel. If it's like a family or friend where we can, or a very, very open client where we could just really get to grips with things and just have a conversation about the cards and have a two-way conversation with the client and also with the cards, I think that's fantastic. A lot of the time I really struggle with my words, and I struggle to get my mind in order. So at least if I can write it down, I've got the time to make sure that I'm actually saying the right thing, and I don't have these great big long pauses where I've just forgotten the words, like, or any, yeah, where I just don't make any sense. I've still got mum brain, so, you know, I've got to work to my strengths at the moment, and my, see, there's one of those moments where I've forgotten what I'm going to say, so I'll just move on to the next question. If you can hear the birds in the background, I'm sorry if that noise is a bit distracting. It's we're just about to hit breeding season at the moment, and we live in a quite a bushy area, so all the birds are basically trying to get it on, and it's very loud. So that's what's going on. I'm filming in the morning, and that's usually one of their times. So it sounds as if the minor birds and the crows are fighting over trees. I think that's what's happening. Next question. What led you to start the videos at first, and specifically the unboxings? So this one's fairly easy to answer because I actually have got a video on this topic, and I'll link it in the cards and also in the description box below. But just as like a Cliff's Notes kind of summary of what had happened. So I was about a third of the way through my maternity leave, and I was really trying to decide what I wanted to do, whether I was going to go back, whether I was going to continue, or whether I was going to be a stay-at-home mum for the first time. I wasn't entirely sure. And the birth was quite crazy, it was nothing like what we had planned for. So, and I realized that like a lot of my identity was tied up in that particular job. And when I wasn't doing that anymore, I kind of didn't know who I was, and I felt like I'd spent so much time trying to, work on my career that I'd actually stopped doing all the other things that I enjoyed. Like I'd stopped making soap, and I'd stopped making candles, and I'd stopped, reading cards like as often as I had been doing. And I was like, my confidence was sort of shook as well. A lot of when I was at that job, there was plenty of opportunities to speak, to do like public speaking, and to also be filmed and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't something I was immediately comfortable with. And yeah, I think like they sort of lost the faith that I was actually able to do it, even though I had like, presented at big meetings before, and I had done all that kind of stuff. But other people joined the business that were more comfortable with public speaking. So those opportunities just sort of stopped presenting themselves, and when an opportunity did, it was kind of like, oh no, you don't need to do it, we've got someone else that could do it. So it wasn't really being developed, and I got this kind of like fear of actual public speaking and being in front of a camera. So I was like, you know what, I've just gone through this incredibly like perspective shifting experience of being pregnant and having a baby, and it just not going to plan, and then ending up with this baby that was, I love her so much, but she is full on. There is not even a period of 20 seconds in a day where I've got to myself. Like, seriously, it's full on. Like, who even am I anymore? Can I do anything? Like, what is it? So yeah, I just sort of thought, what really scares me? And what really scared me was the idea of getting on camera and actually public speaking and putting it out into the world, and being really vulnerable about who I am and what my interests are, because I'm a fairly like secretive person. I'm not sure if that's like the best way to describe it, but I'm fairly private, right? So even if I have a relationship with people and make friendships and things, there's still an awful lot that I hold back, that for some reason it just feels like some things are just mine, and I don't really talk about that. And I guess my woo-woo stuff was stuff that I wasn't really talking about, with other people. So it was kind of like, oh, I'm going to be outing myself as this like witch basically. And I didn't know if I was comfortable with doing that. And I was just like, fuck it. If I'm really scared by it, then I absolutely have to do it. So I did it. And my earlier videos now were just like, oh God, they're so bad. They're so bad. But I'm really glad that I did them, because otherwise I wouldn't be at a point now where I feel relatively comfortable in front of the camera. So, it was kind of like me, what's the word? What am I even trying to say? I guess it was kind of for me, but other people could participate if they wanted, by watching my videos. And I wanted to meet people, I was feeling really isolated. We'd been living in a different state for a long time, and then after we had the baby and everything, we moved back up here. And a lot of my friendships I hadn't really maintained when I was away. So, you know, quite a few of them I've just lost contact with people, and it's a real bummer. So, you know, I didn't really have, I'm just listening to my husband. I think he's on the phone. Yeah, I didn't really have anyone. So I was like, I wonder if I could make some witchy friends and, you know, have a different community that way. So I guess that's actually not a Cliff's Notes at all. It's like a lot of information. So that's why I did it, because I was scared, and I wanted to prove to myself that I could actually do it. That, you know, I was strong enough to do it, and I was brave enough to do it, and yeah, and it was something different. So I thought, I'm always looking for different ways to challenge myself, and I can't really not rise to the occasion with a challenge. I'm very competitive, so if I set myself, you know, that challenge, like obviously I had to keep on doing it. So that's kind of why. And then the follow-on question from that is, so what led you to start the videos at first, and specifically the unboxing? Because the unboxing was easy. It was easy. I was just simply talking about something that was in front of me, and it felt like it was a good, comfortable way for me to ease into the process of making videos, trying to figure out how to edit them, how the YouTube platform actually works, you know, on the back end, like how to upload this stuff. Like, it's nothing I had ever done before. Before I actually started making YouTube videos, I wasn't even really using YouTube that much. Like, I was watching a few people, but it wasn't one of those places I would first come to, you know, to look for information. So yeah, it was all like completely new to me, and I had to work out how to do that. So yeah, the unboxing was just easy, and it was little fun things that could be posted to me. You know, I wasn't getting out of the house much. My daughter could not stand the car, so even like a 6-minute car trip was excruciating. You know, so I just stopped leaving the house. So at least if things came to me on the weekend, I could, you know, open them up and do a video while she was out with my husband having a walk, or down for a sleep or something like that. So yeah, it was just convenient. There was no real strategy there. It was just an easy way to talk about stuff, and things being sent to my house, which was pretty much essential at that point in time. Sorry, I can hear my husband stalking around, talking on the phone. He's very loud. I don't know if you can actually hear that. I was gone outside. Okay, bless him. That's good. All right, and then probably the last question for today is, I'm currently trying to find a way to work 1 day a week. And I'm struggling after having a bubba to find the confidence to launch anything freelance or entrepreneurial. And, you know, what kind of advice do you have about that? Really interesting question. I didn't set out to start a business. So I think if you feel like you're wanting to do something entrepreneurial or freelance, I guess you've got to consider like what your skills are and what your interests are. So I think interest is always more important than skill a lot of the time, because you can become proficient at something, but you can't force an interest and you can't force a passion. So back in my, you know, previous work life, even though it was nice to have someone that might have had like retail experience, for example, if it was a retail job, it was actually more important that they were passionate about the brand, and they were, you know, really excited about connecting with people and pampering people and all this kind of stuff. You know, that was really what was more important. If they, you know, if they simply had book knowledge about the products, but they couldn't interact with anyone, and they didn't actually enjoy interacting with anyone, you know, it's like, well, you kind of know who you're going to choose for a position, right? So yeah, I guess for me, because I had a lot of downtime in the sense that my daughter didn't sleep well, so I would have to be pretty much like with her constantly in order for her to sleep. And in the early days, you know, they're napping 3 times a day, and then there's nighttime. So if you're sort of stuck beside a baby trying to, you know, leverage out this nap, you may not have a lot of physical free time, but your mind, it is, you know, kind of free for part of it. So I guess use the downtime that you have to think about what you're passionate about, what you love, what interests you, what makes you feel like you just want to, you know, jump out of bed and get stuck into it, and what your skills are, and try and get those two to, you know, sort of marry up. I think where it gets tricky there is where, you know, if you need to have a job where it has to be profitable, like it has to make you money, that's where it's tricky. It's almost like it takes a lot of time and effort to set up a business, and at least for me, you do not really see returns for a long period of time. And the money that you do get in is, you know, sporadic and it really can't be relied upon. And, you know, sometimes you'll, you know, do your promotions and stuff exactly the same week on week, and sometimes you'll get some sales and some clients from that, and sometimes it'll be absolutely nothing. So I don't know, I think if I was in a position where I had to really be earning money, and that was the whole purpose of me having that, you know, day, that I would probably just try and find casual work, or I'd try and find you know, just like working 1 or 2 days a week or something like that. Because yeah, at least in this kind of line of work, that the money is not regular, it's not guaranteed. I can't rely upon it. It seems to take a lot of many years of that kind of work in order to actually build that reputation enough for yourself that you can actually rely on regular business. Like there's quite a few tarot readers that I could, you know, rattle off, but you probably know who I'm talking about, that have you know, really put in the hard yards and they're really successful now. And yeah, I think that's what needs to happen with this kind of line of work. But you know, if you're a consultant or you're a graphic designer or you were any of these kind of things, you could, yeah, probably make it work fairly well with that, you know, 1 day per week. But I think, yeah, the real key, everything else will begin to, you know, fall into place a bit better if you have actually decided what it is that you love, what it is that you want to do, and marry it off against your skills. And something should sort of come out from that. So using that downtime productively, you know, and like it's subtle work. Like, you know, our brains work in sort of slow, small ways sometimes. So I think I was working towards this business for, you know, many months before it was actually a cognizant idea, before I was really sort of, you know, clear on it. So I think having time to contemplate is really important. You know, there's a lot of movement these days to the I'm busy, and I think that there is a lot of value in that, because we are trying to be, you know, achieve so much in our day. And I'm so guilty of this, because I'm one of those people. I'm completely one of those people. But at least for me, thankfully, I get a lot of joy out of actually doing things and ticking things off a list. But for many people, it just feels like it's, you know, smothering. Oh, my coffee's here. I made a coffee. Is it still warm? No. I've been talking. Yeah, I keep on going off on tangents, but I guess the real thing is that you just have to know what makes you happy, and you have to know what skills you have, and just try and marry those two together. Yeah, so it looks as if that is the last question for today. There's a few other ones, but they are a bit more like chunky topics that I think I would need to have a full video just on those particular questions. So I hope today has been interesting. If you've got ideas for any other kinds of videos that you'd like to see me do, or if you'd like to have another sort of Q&A style video again, you feel free to, you know, send me an email or leave a comment below, or catch me on Instagram or Facebook or any of those other places that you'll find me. And if you haven't already subscribed, I'd love you to do that. If you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting the like button. Maybe even sharing this with your friends would be amazing. Retweeting it, all that sort of stuff is phenomenal for really small channels like myself. So anything that you feel sort of inclined to do, I'd really appreciate. And before I go, I'll just show you my cup. It's actually really cute. Tarot cat reading, giving someone some somewhat disturbing news with those cards. Oh, yeah. Okay, well, thanks for watching. Until next time, you have a lovely day, week, month, whatever it ends up being, and I'll speak to you again real soon. Bye.